All right, let's go ahead and get started. There should be like a thank you. Let's have some teachers in here. Okay, so I'm Christine Lawler. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I went to BYU, so I got my bachelor's in marriage, family, human development, and my master's in marriage and family therapy. And I have been practicing for 9 years, which is crazy. That makes me feel. I have also been married for 9 years, and I have 3 little girls. Maddie is 5, Paisley is 3, and then I have a little baby, London, who is 5 months, and she's really sweet. Okay, so today I want to talk about how to become the spouse that you wish that you were married to. So a lot of times when we think about, like, how do I get my ideal marriage, there are usually 2 questions that come to mind. One, how do I need my spouse to change so that our marriage will be better? Or 2, how does my partner need me to change so that our marriage will be better? And I want you to just kind of think about both of those for a second. How do I need my partner to change so that our marriage is better? In my experience, maybe it's just because I'm a little bit stubborn and a little bit prideful, but if I stand in that headspace, like, what do I need? My husband is Tom. Like, what do I need Tom to do differently so that our marriage is better? I kind of get bogged down in feeling resentful or prideful, angry, upset, annoyed, frustrated, because he has so many things that he needs to do better at so that we can be happy. And that doesn't really help, right? Or on the other hand, if I'm thinking about, okay, what is Tom, like, what's the feedback that I'm getting? What does he need me to do so that our marriage can be better? Then I usually get a little bit defensive, I'm justifying, and even if he's not telling me these things in my own mind, I'm getting defensive, I'm justifying, I'm still being prideful. So instead of, what do you need to change? What does your husband need to change so that your marriage is better? I want to stand in this space where we think of, hey, how do I want to improve myself? What do I want to do? How do I want to grow and develop? And hopefully in that headspace, we can feel more empowered and more excited and more inspired to be the best versions of ourselves. And as we are better versions of ourselves, our marriages will be better too. So number 1, first and foremost, work on yourself. The better and the healthier that we are as individuals, the healthier our marriages are going to be. So I grew up in the church, and I remember singing a lot this song, "The Wise Man Built His House Upon the Rock," right? Wise man built his house upon the rock. When the rains come down and the floods come up, the house on the rock stands still, and the house on the sand washes away. And I just kind of had this epiphany a couple weeks ago, actually, and I think it's one of those things that I'm going to stick in my therapy hat forever, is that the rock in our marriages is our strength as individuals. So the stronger I am as an individual, the healthier my marriage can be. But if I don't have a good, strong sense of self, if I'm insecure, if I bring weaknesses or insecurities or my personal failings into the marriage and try and build a healthy relationship on top of a weak sense of self, it's going to crumble. So we're going to think about 3 letters: an I, standing up straight, an A, and an H. So we are all walking around as individuals, right? We're little I's walking around. I stand on my own, I'm self-sufficient, I'm independent, I am me, I'm an I, and I can stand on my own. But we get into relationships, and it's so nice to find somebody else and say, hey, I support you, you support me. Together, we are something that I couldn't be on my own. We're an A. Isn't this so great? Isn't it so wonderful? We lean on each other and we support each other, which is great in theory, right? That's kind of what Hollywood tells us relationships are. Like, hey, we complete each other. Isn't this wonderful? The problem is, though, that over time in relationships, you don't always meet in the middle and lean on each other the same amount. And so if you're bound, if you are only as strong as the unit, then if somebody isn't pulling their weight and you start to lean, it can feel kind of hectic, kind of overwhelming. It gets frantic. Or if you're feeling like somebody's leaning on you too much, then it can feel overwhelming and burdening. And so you can get resentful, or you can get fed up, or, whatever's going on. If wherever one person is, whatever they're doing, you kind of get dragged along in this, this mess. So the healthier concept of a relationship is an H, where I still am who I am. I can still stand alone and be independent and self-sufficient. But wow, we have this bridge where still together we are something that we couldn't be alone. You make me better, I make you better, we support each other. But if somebody's, whatever the other part is doing, like you'll get tugged a little bit, but if your partner goes off the deep end, or there's big trauma in the relationship, or they decide that they don't want to be married anymore, or whatever it is, or they had a bad day and they're being a jerk, like wherever they are going, if you still have yourself to stand on and to rely on, then it makes the unit stronger, because you haven't crumbled just because they have. You're just right here. All that changes is this bridge piece, instead of, I meet with a lot of people as a counselor that maybe after, 5 or 25 years they get divorced, and it feels like I don't even know who I am anymore. And I think anybody that goes through a divorce is going to feel a level of that, obviously. But we want to be able to still be ourselves. We want to still be able to be strong and work on ourselves in our relationships. Okay, and then the last principle on that one is self-care. Like I said, the healthier I am, the healthier my marriage can be. And so what are things that we need to do to be the healthiest versions of ourselves? I think here about batteries on our phones. This is actually a good analogy because I'm currently running on 7% battery, which I think we could probably all say for our lives. But it's funny with our cell phone batteries that we know that we have to recharge them. They have a fixed battery life, and when it runs out, it runs out. And so if we don't plug it in, I know that today I am playing with fire. I know that I'm going to run out of battery before my day is done because I didn't take the time to recharge it. But I would ask us as women, as wives, as mothers, what we do to recharge our batteries. Because I know for myself, sometimes I just am trying to run on empty and run and run and run and keep going, and I don't have time to sit down and charge. When am I supposed to carve that out? And just like with our phones, you got to figure it out. Like, not charging isn't an option. And the other piece of the analogy that I like is, there are different things that drain your battery differently and different things that charge your battery differently. I'm sure you've all figured out that, like, if you do the regular phone charger, it charges one speed, but if you do like an iPad charger on your cell phone, it charges faster. Or now they have a connector where you can charge your phone with your computer charger, and you can get like your whole battery recharged in an hour, which is great. So how do we use that analogy for ourselves? Like, I want you to think for a minute, what are the things that you do that give yourself a good, solid recharge? I know sometimes when I'm fed up with my kids, they're like, Mommy needs a break. I'll just go into my room in the quiet and start like flipping through Instagram or something. And sure, that's great. Or like I'll watch a show at the end of the night, and like there's nothing wrong with that. But it doesn't really recharge me. I don't really leave 10 minutes of perusing on Instagram feeling fortified, feeling like, hey, I just got a really good recharge. So for me, something better is to just shut my door and lie face down on my bed. If I lie face down on my bed for 10 minutes, I feel way different than if I just scroll through Instagram for 10 minutes. Or even better, a bubble bath in the dark with a candle or with a show on, like that, and a Dr. Pepper. That is my miracle formula of like, okay, this is some me time. So, self-care doesn't have to look like an expensive massage at the spa or a weekend getaway with your husband. I think those things are great, but try and find ways that you can really recharge your batteries in small, simple ways every single day. obviously, as we know in the church, like starting your day with prayer, reading your scriptures, having that connection with our Father in heaven, like those are things that will really fortify you and charge your battery in a meaningful way. Close second to that, number 2 is sleep. I'm super biased here because I am a sleep consultant, but also the reason that I started being so passionate about sleep is because of my background as a therapist. Sleep is the number 1 predictor for your mental and emotional and physical health. Sleep is so important, and most of us aren't getting enough of it. So sleep is really our most important self-care. A lot of us, when we got married, we got this advice, don't go to bed angry. And to that, I would say, why not? Are we supposed to stay up and fight when we're tired and grumpy? I say, do go to bed angry. If you are angry and you're not seeing eye to eye, go to bed. Sleep on it. Bump into each other in the middle of the night. Wake up looking at your husband with his messy sleep hair and his morning breath and fall in love with that man again. There's something about getting a good night of sleep that just rejuvenates you and makes you feel like, okay, we can handle this. So really prioritize your sleep. We just got back from Cancun last night, actually, and I thought it was funny as I was preparing for this and writing down how important sleep is. When we left last week, we had to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get our family up and get to the airport for a 6 a.m. flight. And how was my attitude on that trip? It was bad. I was such a brat because I was so tired. And my husband was grumpy because he was tired, and then I was grumpy because he was grumpy. And I never fight with my husband. He is he's so great. He's the most perfect man. And we just bickered for like the first 2 days of our incredible trip because we were sleep deprived. And then once we weren't sleep deprived anymore, it's like we fell in love all over again. So to be your best self in your marriage, get the sleep that you need. I promise it will help. Okay, number 3, let go of perfectionism. The internal voice that we have with ourselves is the voice that we also use to speak to our husbands and our children with. If you can be easier on yourself, be more gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself, it's the best gift that you can give your family. The harder you are on yourself, the harder you will be on your family. Another thing I have written here, if you see in the notes, says in defense of setting the bar low. That's kind of the opposite of what we usually talk about, right? We want to set the bar high, we want to set a high standard, we want to have something to reach for. But I think of pole vaulting. Right? When you're learning to pole vault, and granted I never did track or field, so this is just my speculation, but you start out with a low bar, right? And as you build your skill, as you gain, as you get better, that's when you start moving the bar higher. But if I go out onto a track right now and the bar is like 10 feet in the air, I'm going to give it a shot 2 or 3 times, and then I'm kind of over it because I don't like doing things that I'm not good at. And so I'm going to feel discouraged, I'm going to feel overwhelmed, and I'm probably going to give up. Because what's the point? I am not good enough, I'm just not going to be able to do it, so no thanks. But for most of us, this isn't true across the board, but for most of us, we have this innate desire to grow, to learn. Most of us are naturally perfectionistic, and we like growth, we like challenges. And so if you can set the bar low for yourself and pat yourself on the back for the smaller successes that you have, 1, you're going to give that same grace to your family, but 2, it's going to make you aim higher, but in a better way. So I tell people in counseling all the time, like, hey, you woke up this morning and you took a shower. That's great. And they're like, that doesn't really count. It's like, no, but you did it. You did that. So you did it today, you can do it tomorrow, and then you can keep growing, you can keep building on yourself. But especially with social media, like there are so many things that you can scroll through and feel inadequate in 8,000 ways. But if instead you can focus on the areas that you are the things that you are doing, and give yourself credit for that, then you will give your partner credit for the things that he is doing, your filter will be changed. So that you can see like, hey, this is what I am doing, and that's really great. And hey, look at you, you're doing this and that. And you can give that same grace to your kids. Hey, wow, yeah, sure, there's some areas for improvement, but this right here is already really good. So you don't have to have your hair perfect every day, and your house perfectly clean, and your laundry all the way done, and your floors swept, and did I say your hair perfect? And your makeup done, and the cutest clothes, and the most well-behaved children, and the most money, and the fanciest cars. Like, we don't have to have all of that stuff. Or read a million books, or whatever. We can just start with where you're at, let that be good enough, and I promise you will expound upon it. You will continue to grow. Kind of going along with that, practice acceptance. Acceptance versus change is one of, I think, the trickiest principles in life and in marriage. So one big argument that I have, and you'll have to kind of noodle with this for a second, is that happy, healthy marriages happen when I accept my husband exactly how he is, and I change myself to be a better match for him. If both partners are doing that in the same amount, that's when you meet in the middle and create this beautiful H relationship, where I am only focused on changing me and accepting him. And if he is only focused on accepting me and changing himself, then it's going to be really great, because I'm not very good at changing him. I've been trying for 9 years and it hasn't worked. No, just kidding. He's really, really great. One thing also that is highlighted when we travel, so my husband, for all of his great qualities, he gets so stressed out when we travel, and when he gets stressed, he gets grumpy. And I do not, travel is not a thing that stresses me out, and I kind of, I don't know, if the kids are kicking somebody's seat, sorry, but you're sitting you're sitting in front of a 5-year-old. But Tom is like, stop kicking the seat, stop kicking the seat, stop kicking the seat. And I'm like, chill, just let it be okay, right? But if I am sitting in wanting him to change, not letting it be okay that he is the way that he is, then all I'm doing is getting mad that he's stressed. And how helpful and effective is that? It doesn't work. But instead, if I just accept, he gets stressed out when we travel, fact, okay, that is what it is, so what am I going to do about it? Then I can arm myself and prepare myself to handle that better, rather than just sitting in frustration and pride and self-righteousness that he is so wrong and if only he would change, then everything would be so much better. Instead, I'm just acknowledging what is, and guess what? I have weaknesses too that he just has to acknowledge. I will never be on time. Sorry. We just have to acknowledge that we carry with us some of the shortcomings that we have, and if I can accept my partner for how he is and work on how to better myself, then we'll be better off. Here's one of my other favorite things. We only, again with acceptance, it is what it is. We can only do what we can do. I argue that in life, take your giant to-do list, for example. There are only 3 possibilities. So this is an exercise I do in counseling a lot. Make a list, and do this when you get home, make a list of your whole entire to-do list. Everything that needs to get done. And everything falls into one of 3 categories. I do it. Someone else does it. Or it doesn't get done. I want you to think of your massive to-do list. Not just the to-dos for today and this week, but photo books. Those things that are just on your list perpetually that just aren't getting done. Okay, so think of all of the things that you expect of yourself, all of the things that you tell yourself that you should do. And I would argue that everything falls into one of 3 categories. I do it, somebody else does it, or it doesn't get done. There's not a fourth option. Everything, either you do it, somebody else does it, or it doesn't happen. And what I find usually when I'm talking to clients is that we've got this massive list of things that go in the I do it column, which makes us feel overwhelmed, inadequate, burned out, frustrated, like we're drowning. Then we've got a couple things on this list if somebody else does it, but as wives and mothers, that list is usually filled with resentment because they should be doing it, but they're not, and so I'm mad about it. And then the it doesn't get done list, everybody wants to just like wish that didn't exist. Like, no, that's not allowed. It should get done. And my challenge for you is to take a look at your list and actively choose to put things in this it doesn't get done list and make peace with that. Because you only have the capacity that you have. Or get creative and figure out how to get somebody else to do it. That's another topic for a different day. But one thing that I'll tell you guys, this is one of my favorite little hacks. But first, the backstory. I hate cooking. I hate everything about it. I hate meal planning. I hate grocery shopping. I hate everything about it. It's the worst. I hate cooking. I hate cleaning up. Ugh. And finally, probably over the last year, I have realized that I'm allowed to be a good Mormon woman and not like cooking. I'm allowed to give my family Cheerios for Sunday dinner, and that is okay. And we don't have time to get into all the details, but then I chatted with some of my other friends, and we made this meal swap. So twice a week, there's one person that cooks 6 meals, delivers them hot and fresh to everybody else, and all I have to do is make 1 meal every 3 weeks and take it to my friends. And in exchange, I get dinner on my doorstep twice a week that can be dinner that night and leftovers the next day, and it's great. So figure out meal swaps for you guys. But figure out how to practice acceptance with the list of things that just aren't going to get done. Okay, number 5, give the benefit of the doubt. Grace is the gift that keeps on giving. Like I said before with acceptance and letting go of perfectionism, if we can change that internal voice with ourselves and be kinder to ourselves, it will trickle down and benefit our families, especially our partners. So one principle here that I really love is called unconditional positive regard. It's an idea coined by John Gottman. I don't know if any of you have heard of John Gottman, but he's awesome. Look up any of his books, and they're great. But the idea here is that in so many situations, we are left to make assumptions. And we can either give the benefit of the doubt, we can either choose to see somebody in a positive light, or we can choose to see somebody in a negative light. And most of the time, that happens automatically and just immediately. So I remember when I was in grad school, seriously, you guys, my husband is like the best ever. I feel like I'm telling all these stories about how he's imperfect. But I was in grad school. I'm 3 months older than him. So he was a grade younger than me, and then with the mission, that meant that he was still in undergrad when I was in grad school. So I'm in grad school. I'm reading this book talking about unconditional positive regard. I had 3 jobs at the time. Tom wasn't working, so I was going through school and putting him through school. And I came home at 9 o'clock at night after a day of school and working 2 different jobs, and I needed to work on my thesis. I walk in the door, and the house is trashed. There's no food to eat. There's a football game on, and he's nowhere to be seen. And so I walked in, and I just immediately right? But I was like, okay, unconditional positive regard, how do we reframe this one? And so I just sat there on my welcome mat inside my door, and I thought, okay, how do I reframe this? Because immediately I noticed all of these negative thoughts, like, how come I have to be the one that's working 3 jobs? Oh, just because I'm the woman, I have to be the one to cook and clean too? Awesome. And then I stopped myself and I was like, okay, false. Like, Tom's the least chauvinistic person I know. Like, he absolutely is not assuming that just because I'm the woman, I'm going to cook and clean up after him. 2, he's not even watching said football game, so I can't get mad at him that it's on because he's nowhere to be seen. And 3, and this one was the bigger one for me, that I know later in life, when he comes home from work and the house is trashed, I'm going to want a little bit of grace. And so actually, this messy house can be an opportunity. And so I kind of like talked myself down with that, and I realized he's actually way better at cleaning the house than I am. And usually when I get home, there is something that I can eat and the house is picked up. So I wonder if there's something going on. And so I walked into the second bedroom. Sorry, it makes me choked up every time I think about it. And I just put my hand on his shoulder. And I was like, hey, how's it going? And he almost broke. He was so stressed out. He was so overwhelmed. He was studying for an OCHEM test, trying to get into dental school. And he was so overwhelmed and feeling so inadequate. And all of this pressure on his shoulders as a young guy trying to figure out, how am I going to support my family? And I am so grateful that I had that 2-minute talk with myself to see his perspective, to give him the benefit of the doubt, so that I could go in there with grace, instead of going in there guns blazing, mad that he wasn't picking up. Instead of adding one more thing to his list of how he was inadequate, I could see who he really was and give him the benefit of the doubt. And that provided not only such a great moment of connection right then in that moment, but such a powerful learning lesson for the rest of our relationship. That the simplest thing of just taking a step back, checking the assumptions that we're making, and choosing to give grace, not only for ourselves, but for our partners, can transform your marriage. Number 6, identify and articulate your needs clearly. I have a sister-in-law, and we were sitting around the table one time. It was Thanksgiving, but it wasn't Thanksgiving dinner, so it was just Thanksgiving time. And she was flipping through a magazine, and she came to an ad, and she pointed to it, and she said, Ben, this is what I want for Christmas. This necklace right here. I'm going to rip it out. I'm going to put it in your wallet. Buy me this necklace. And I remember I kind of like chuckled at her. And she said what was so powerful to me. She said, you know what? I realized he wants to give me what I want. But if I don't make it clear to him what that is, then I'm not going to get it. And so I've let go of the expectation that he should just know. Right? The other story that I like to share here, when we were in dental school, I was pregnant with my second, and we were both busy, and life was just chaotic, and I was just feeling disconnected from my husband. And I'm a marriage therapist, so I was like, how can I be a marriage therapist and feel this disconnected? So I figured out all the things that I wanted to say and the source of the disconnection and all of that, and we had this really great conversation, and I just poured my heart out to my husband for like an hour and just told him everything that was on my mind. And he was so sweet and validating, and he held me, and he said, okay, I hear you, and like, what do you want me to do? I was like, I just told you. But I loved that. I'm so glad that he said that, because it put me in check, and I just realized, like, okay, yeah, I said all of these things, but I didn't say, like, the one thing. So I thought about it for a second, and I said, I need to have emotional conversations with you. He's like, oh, okay, I can do that. And then it was great. But I was saying all of these things, but he wasn't hearing it. He was willing to meet my needs, but even though I thought that I could not have been more clear, I wasn't. The last one, I want to jump back to that one. Be clear and easy to please. Like I said, the clearer you are, but if we set this super high standard for our husbands and all of these hoops that they have to jump through in order to please us, they're going to be like the pole vaulters and be like, she's going to be mad at me anyway, why do I even bother? And so try to be easy to please. And then as far as intimacy, I actually have a whole different, if you want to look me up on YouTube, go to Christine Lawler and then intimacy. I gave this talk to, it was like a combined ward, priesthood and relief society thing about intimacy. It's really great. But the one thing that I want to touch on here is with intimacy, like, we have to understand and recognize that our husbands, like, their desire to feel loved and connected to us often comes through intimacy. And as women who are tired and don't always have the same level of desire, it's really easy to minimize those needs and act like they're not important. And sometimes we can be really harsh or hurtful in our rejection of that. So I think of like, my love language is communication. Like there's nothing that makes me feel closer to my husband than if we just like sit down and have a good chat. But if I heard my husband talking to his friends and they're like, oh, the worst part of vacations is Chrissy just wants to talk and talk and talk. Like, it's nice to go on a trip, but I have to listen to her. Like, that would hurt me so much. Or if he came home at the end of the day and I said, hey, I want to talk to you about my day. And he's like, oh, no, go away. Stop talking to me. Shut your mouth. That would make me so sad. And there are a lot of times, directly like that or indirectly, that our husbands reach out to us wanting to connect. And because we're tired, or the kids have been tyrants all day, or the house is a mess, or you're kind of mad at him for being home late, there are a lot of times that it's, nope, go away. And so I'm not saying that you have to turn all of your no's into yeses, but just recognize and be kind about what his needs are and what your needs are, and strive to try to meet each other's needs with charity and love. And then the last one, sacrifice. I think this is such a beautiful, representation, but we are married at an altar. So what does that mean? Like, what are we sacrificing, or what are we promising to sacrifice when we get married? And I would argue that we are sacrificing our flaws, our very favorite shortcomings. Like, I'm super stubborn. And I actually really like that quality about myself sometimes, but there's sometimes when it totally backfires. And so figuring out what am I willing to sacrifice for the good of my relationship? And if I sacrifice some of my wants, or sacrifice, sacrifice is so hard because there's a difference between healthy sacrifice and unhealthy sacrifice. Unhealthy sacrifice would be like sacrificing who you are, or feeling trapped, or feeling forced to give. But healthy sacrifice has the spirit of charity with it, this joy in the giving. I think about my kids. Like, if I got my daughter a brand new bike and I said, here's your stupid bike, you spoiled, entitled brat, like, how much would she appreciate the gift that is? And so, yeah, I sacrificed it, and you got a bike, why aren't you happy? But if there's no charity in the giving, if there's no love in the sacrifice, then I don't want to say it doesn't count, but you miss the mark. So with that, I encourage you all to, I know this was short and I had to throw a lot at you. I will post this and hopefully send it out to the Relief Society or whatever. But I hope that you can all walk away with ideas of how you can focus on yourself to be empowered and inspired to be the best version of yourself, and therefore let that trickle down and improve your marriages.